Hi, me again. And just the other day I was asked a question by one of my delegates on an Excel course about formatting, and particularly formatting fractions, and I thought, well, this must be an easy answer, and it actually turned out to be more difficult than I expected, but I did come up with a couple of solutions, one of which I'm quite proud of. I think it's quite elegant. So, this is the question. We have timesheets, we have people who book in for work at a certain time, they clock off at a certain time, and we calculate how many hours they've worked. Many of you will be familiar with this type of calculation. These are not numbers. These are formatted as time. So if I change them to be numbers, if I change that so it's a number, you'll see that it's a fraction of a day. So it's the time, it's a day being 24 hours. This is the fraction of the way through that day. So in order to see that as a time, Excel will do a calculation on it based upon the 24. So when we say this one minus that one, if we just do it as a fraction, we're not going to get the number of hours. We need to multiply by 24 to get the number of hours. Now, therein lies the first of the problems, because if I just do a straight calculation, it will give me a rounding error, because these will not give me an exact answer. So I do need to make sure that I say round it, and I'm saying to the nearest 2 digits. That lets me work with what I want to do next. Now, the thing they wanted was they didn't like this format for showing parts of an hour. What they wanted was the fractional format. Now, that fractional format is actually really difficult to read and quite ugly. The fractional format you get in Word is so much nicer. When you type in a fraction, as soon as you press the spacebar, it converts into a nicer looking fractional format. And I wish they had that same look of a fractional format in Excel. But the way Word does this is it does it through the autocorrect options. So it's actually automatically formatting whilst we type. So it's an autocorrect. And the reason it does that is from File, Options, and from the proofing. If we go to the autocorrect options, we'll be able to see that this auto format as you type fractions are shown with a fraction character. Now let's go and have a look at how we do that in Excel. Let's try the same way first of all. So File, Options, Proofing, and we've got autocorrect. So we must have the same options there. Auto format as you type. Clearly we don't have the same options. The engine that drives the text formatting in Word is much more powerful than the text formatting in Excel, because most of the time we don't need it. But I really don't like this fractional style. So I went into VBA and I made it so that I have my own fractional style here. And so as I choose, let's say we choose a number there, this guy gets in really early and he only works a few hours. This hasn't updated until I run my macro, and now it's updated. Now I like that, so let's share it with you and show you how we did it. Well, the first thing we needed to do was we needed to find out where we want to start the superscript and where we want to start the subscript, and then how many characters we need for each of them. Actually, in this particular example, we only ever need the one character, but I wrote the code to be able to cope with more than one character anyway. And what we've got is we first of all turn the string, in other words, the number that's in there, into a text string. So we do that by putting an apostrophe before it. We then have any number of characters to start with, followed by a space. We then have another character or number of characters, followed by the /, and then a couple more characters. And then we could have the option for some HRS at the end after another space. In this example, again, I've taken that option out. So what we actually need to find is we need to find where we want to start the superscript and for how many characters, where we want to start the subscript and for how many characters. And the way we do that is we look for the first space and we add 1. That's where we want to start the superscript. How many characters long is it? Well, we say it's wherever the / is within our string minus where we start the number of characters for the superscript. We then need to find out where our substring starts, and it's wherever that / is plus 1. The length of it is the start of the normal text, which is the second of these, or the length of the string, minus wherever we started. So we've actually got all 4 of the parameters that we need. So let's have a look at the code itself. So Alt F11, and here's the code. So I've called this subroutine FracScript, and I've actually added it onto a button, and I've added it onto a button on the workbook, and it's immediately above. So if I click on another cell to the right, the cell underneath there, which in this instance is E1, if I press the left arrow, it's selected E1, but that cell has a name, and the name is Calculate button. So if I go anywhere else and choose to move to, if it's working, it doesn't like doing that in a table, move to Calculate button, it selects that cell E1. And that's useful because I'm actually naming that cell in my code. So if we go back to the VBA, and there's the range for that Calculate button cell. In other words, it's not the Calculate button, it's the cell underneath it in the workbook. And that's the cell I've selected to start with. And the reason I've chosen that cell is because that cell will always be in my range of data, even if I don't have any of these filled in. First thing I'm going to do with it is calculate how many rows of data I've got, because I then want to run a loop for this action that many times however many rows of data I've got, minus 1 for the header. So I do a count to find out where the last row is, and I say from my active cell, which is E1 with that Calculate button cell, is the current region, in other words, however big the current region is, count the number of rows, and then take off 1 for the header. Here's the start of my loop. For x equals 1 to what we've just calculated, and what I want to do is I want to say active cell offset 1 row down, no cells across. Select that cell. So I've come immediately down below the cell that I was in. So I'm now in that cell there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the cell, not the one I'm in, but the one immediately to the left. So it's an offset from the one I'm in, 0 rows, but 1 column to the left. And I'm going to take the value from there, and I'm going to make it equal to the cell that I'm in. So what that bit will be doing is it's looking in this cell here, which is the decimal calculation of the hours worked, and putting the same value in this cell here. Now it's asking the question, if the value of the integer of that cell is the same as the value, in other words, if it doesn't have any fractional parts to it, then we don't actually need to do the whole of this. We just need to say turn it into text. So we're just putting the apostrophe in front of it, and then come out of the loop or go to the next thing in the loop. And that next x doesn't go to the next item in the loop, it goes to a positional marker or a bookmark called next x, which just happens to go to the next x. Otherwise, do all of this. So it's going to change the cell's formatting to the fractional format, and you'll notice that these got single question marks, and that basically means a fractional format with only 1 number for each of them. And then with that active cell, put the apostrophe before it, and then take the text value for what's in there. Now we're going to look for those 4 things that I showed you before. So the start of where we want the superscript, which is basically where the space is, plus 1. The length of our superscript, which is where it finds the / minus where it starts. The substring start is where it finds the / plus 1, similar to that one there. And the length of the substring is actually where it finds the superstring start plus 1, and it then looks for the next space and subtracts from it the substart. Now actually in this instance we don't actually need the sublength because we're just going to run it to the end of the string. But if we take out these remarks here, because we want space HRS, hours, at the end in the same cell, then we will need that one in there as well. Then it ends the if and goes on with the loop, so it carries on cycling through that for as many as we've got rows of data. So let's actually just test that. So I'm going to change some of these. Yep, exactly 2 hours. Now you'll notice it hasn't updated that there until I click on there. Now it says 2 hours. Now let's see what we can do with that. Because what we can actually do, the great thing about this is it's actually still a number in those cells. In other words, we can do maths on them. And if we have a rate of pay, we can say, look in there at that value and multiply it by the rate of pay. This is very dangerous because watch what happens here with this number when this value changes. So I'm going to say, yeah, let's take a number there and let's change that, make it a lot bigger so it's going to be immediately obvious. This number is 14 3/4. This number has not changed, and this has not changed. So if I now produce some kind of printout based upon this, my numbers will be wrong. This is especially important because you might be hiding that column, so it's much cleaner. You must make sure that this number is not pointing to that one. It's actually pointing to the one that's got the real number in it. So you'd make sure that number there was that cell, not this one. That makes it dynamic, means it calculates as we go, rather than us having to click the button to make it work. Now let me change it down here. Yep, fine. That's changed. As soon as I change and click the button, yes, the calculations here will update, but they won't do that until you click the button to run the macro. Now what I could do is I could change it so that the macro automatically runs depending on different actions on the sheet. So I keep calling it a macro, subroutine really. So I could change it so it's an action on something else, not as a macro but something on the sheet. And I could do it with close actions or open actions or moving around actions, but that will slow the file down quite a lot. What I'd like to know how to do is how to get that to run not as a subroutine but as a function, as a UDF, a user-defined function. That'd be really useful because then all we do is we put the UDF into the field there, and then when these numbers change, the UDF will automatically recalculate, and then anything based upon it would work. That would be a really elegant solution. The problem is within a UDF, I can't find any way of changing the formatting in the cell that I'm in with the function. Sure, there is a way. I've seen ways of referring to the caller and also to this cell, but I haven't been able to make any of them work. So I went back to my original, and I actually came up with an even more elegant solution, one that I really like. What I've done is I've got my numbers just the same, and I've got my calculation just the same. And then I've taken the integer from that, and then the remainder from that. And I've simply changed the formatting for the remainder column. And I've changed it into freestyle script, and you can of course make it slightly smaller if you so desire. And I think that works really well. I think it's a nice elegant solution. Again, you can hide this. If you have your numbers over here, do be careful that these ones are pointing to your total number of hours, which might be in a hidden cell. But you can do it in another way. So I could say, for example, rather than point into them, let's say it equals, and as long as I open the brackets and I say that one plus that one, and then close the brackets multiplied by that one which is locked. That will also give me the same answer, except there, and the reason is because that one contains an empty text string. So not always the best. I would suggest you always try and point to the real calculation, not necessarily the numbers over here. Other than that, I hope it's been useful. I found it interesting to do, a bit of a problem for me. If anybody does have any suggestions on how to put this similar routine into a user-defined function, I think a lot of people will be really interested in that. I think it'd be a great idea. Okay. Hope you found it useful once more, and thank you for listening.